Our first speaker is John Scheltens. I'm very pleased to introduce John, NSS past president, international caver, recipient of the NSS Outstanding Service Award, and certainly one of our luminaries. And instead of have you listen to me try and introduce him, I think it's best that you just hear from John directly and we give him as much time as we possibly can.
Well, welcome everybody. I'm not sure exactly what these talks are supposed to be about, but I'm going to try to cover about maybe 5 or 6 different topics because I would have never guessed, and I'm afraid to admit how many years ago I started caving. I can tell you exactly, 1966, that crawling around the Holy Ground would lead to so many interesting places, people, opportunities that would have never happened in any other organization or career I can think of. But yeah, 1966, I got my driver's license. Hey, you're a teenager, you get your driver's license. Well, I had heard from the Boy Scouts, that there was a state park in Iowa that had caves in it. I thought, cool. So I got my brother, my next door neighbor, my new driver's license, an old 1955 Ford, and headed there for the weekend. And it was cool. The problem is my dad thought I was just going for the day. And that's how it started. And I didn't even know, let's see here, how these things work here. Other than getting started caving and finding out about caves, eventually I obviously found out about the Windy City Grotto. Got involved with Windy City, yeah. Greg is here, the sole representative of Windy City Grotto, I guess. And I started going to caving events, right? Started learning about caves all over the place. So I went to, my first NSS convention was 1968 in Springfield, Missouri, which was really an eye-opening experience in so many ways. But the one after that, 1969, was in Lovell, Wyoming. And I had never been west before. This was, because I grew up in the suburb, well, it's now a suburb of Chicago. Back then it was a little town of about 7,000 people, but now it's swallowed up with the city. And so I made my first trip west with Ralph Erlinson and my brother Jim to Lovell, Wyoming, which opened my eyes to Western caving and so many other just neat experiences, not to mention the West and cowboys and all that kind of stuff. But on the way back, we went to the Black Hills, and that's what, get your pictures going here, there we go. And if you've been here before, you know how beautiful the Black Hills are, just a neat country. Geologically, it's just, I think, one of the neatest places in the world because you can go from pre-Cambrian to present, like in 10 miles. And obviously it's got caves here, and we were coming down through the hills into Wind Cave National Park. And in Wind Cave National Park, they have buffalo, which is really cool. I've never seen buffalo before, but they were blocking the road. You couldn't get through. And there were a bunch of rangers out there trying to, direct traffic. And one of them seen, that little yellow NSS license plate on the tag. It says, hey, he says, I'm a caver too. I says, oh, cool. And he says, I'm a seasonal ranger here, but if you can stick around till tomorrow, we can take a trip in the back parts of the cave. I said, deal, okay? So little did I know what I was getting myself into. So the next day we took a trip in the back parts of the cave because he was a seasonal ranger. His name was Bob Ernst. He was I think an ornithologist from North Dakota who worked seasonal ranger at Wind Cave. And him and some other rangers got the Spelunker program going back then. And anyway, we took this trip for a couple hours and it's cool, but it's just, when I got out, I wanted to see a map of the cave. So I went up to the administration building, pulled out all sorts of pieces of maps and things, but no one complete map of the cave. I couldn't figure that out at all because it had been a national park since 1903, right? It was the first cave national park, 7th national park in the system, first cave, and they didn't have a map. Couldn't believe that. So on the way back to Chicago, Ralph Erlinson and myself were talking about, geez, I wonder if they're interested in some cavers coming out and making them a map. So we corresponded back and forth, and the superintendent said, yeah, that'd be a cool idea. So the next year, in 1970, we came out with 17 cavers, mostly Windy City Grotto at that time, with the sole intent of getting that map made. We signed a contract, and we were there, I think, for a week or 10 days or something like that, because there had been reports. One of the reports was a 1959 NSS expedition to Wind Cave. And in that expedition report filed with the Park Service, they said that they had pretty much found all of the cave, and and you know, it just need to, you know, finish up a few things. Fine. Well, it's been what, 50 years ago? I am no closer to finding the end of that cave than when I first started. So anyway, it was that convention in caving in '69 that brought me out here. I spent some time in the military. I started seeking for a job. I started looking for a job. And lo and behold, the town of Hot Springs that had met people from our cave trips out here said, we're looking for a city engineer. I said, what the hell does a city engineer do in a small town? Sweep the streets at night? But anyway, they offered me a job. I said, well, it's not where I wanted to be, but okay, we'll come out here, we'll take the job for a short period of time because I really wanted to be further west out in Wyoming. And that suckered me in. So anyway, we moved out here in 1977, I think. Spent 30 years on the job there. Bought a ranch. These are pictures of the ranch. Some of you have been there. Some of you have been there 34 years ago. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But it's a great place to live. It really is. Quality of life is the best. Quality of the economy sucks. That is one thing, by the way, that John Milroy and I have in common. He's from Mississippi, and I'm from South Dakota. Two southern states, by the way. That's right. We're the only proud southern state north of the Mason-Dixon line. And the way we compete for the last place in per capita income in the nation. So the quality of life is good. The quality of the economy kind of sucks a little bit. But anyway, getting back to Wind Cave, you know, that's kind of where the fun was. So Wind Cave, you know, kind of suckered me in. And it was the opportunity during the early 70s to have multiple trips out here. They got bigger and bigger. We kept finding more cave. In '72, we had a base camp kind of stuff set up in the back parts of the cave. We had cavers from all over the country. I know Poncho is here. There's a bunch of people who have been there during that period of time. And the cave kept just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And it was, and the further west we went, where did that little laser pointer go that I had that John sabotaged me with? Okay. All right, there it is. I'm gonna take this with me. And of course, the historic part of the cave is up here. That's the visitor center, and the historic part is up here. Now, what had happened, and that was pretty much the whole known cave up until, I think, the early mid-'60s. When Herb and Jan Kahn, who were starting to explore Jewel Cave, the Park Service was concerned about their health, said, we don't really want you going deep in the cave. So they came over to the cave for a while, and then they found a breakaway over here by Omnibus Hall, where this yellow is, and got out into this part of the cave, found the club room, which is this big room here, and this big long passage that leads down to Windy City Lake. So a major expansion by Herb and Jan during that period. But then the Park Service decided, you know, they can go caving again in Jewel Cave because that's their first love. And that's about when I showed up. Now, there have been trips by members of the Colorado Grotto who also had found parts of the cave over here, but we kind of picked up from here. And so Jan Kahn took us for a short trip to show us where the cave was and where they had left off. And of course, the further we kept working our way west, the bigger the passages got. In half-mile hall, this is, you know, about 2,800 feet long, about 200 to 300 feet wide, and the cave just kept going and going. Now, interesting enough, this is a map I did, I think, in 1983, and it represents about 40 miles of cave survey passage. And the interesting thing about it is that was like 1983. Other than an extension that was found, which is not on this map, called Southern Comfort, which kind of goes down over here, the next 100 miles was in the same area that the map you see over here. This is roughly, I don't know, maybe about a square mile, give or take. So the next 100 miles, 140 miles would fit right on top of that map. Until recently, and you'll hear more about this, I'm sure, from on some of the other talks, but Hazel Barton and Adam Weaver and some of the other cavers have been finding major extensions where we left off that heads off this way, big major extension. And I can't even remember what today's total is, 160 some miles. The bottom line is I know I signed that contract 50 years ago, but I'm going to have to default. Let's see here. There we go. Oops, okay. And you'll hear more about this like in history section. The original exploration was done by Elvin McDonald, the guy over there on the left. He's the guy you hear about. The cave was actually found by two brothers, Tom and Jesse Bingham, about 1881. Elvin McDonald kind of got involved about 1890, 91, somewhere in that period, or maybe even 1892. He made a journal, and he was like a kid. I mean, I forgot he was 17, 18, whatever years old. But he was the first real explorer of Wind Cave. And most of that historic section that you saw was because of him. And he went to Chicago for the Columbian Exposition back in, whatever that, 1893. And he came back from that and caught, they call it consumption, I think it's tuberculosis. And he died. And he's buried near the entrance of Wind Cave. But anyway, he was the first real explorer. But it's a private cave at that time, north of Hot Springs. You know, you could, come. Hot Springs was a big tourist community at the turn of the century. All the hot springs, they had lots of bathhouses and a stage that would go up to Wind Cave for tours. And that was kind of a lucrative business. But there got to be a big feud with the different people that owned the cave. Because one had filed an agricultural claim, another had filed a mining claim, and they got into a big feud. And the federal government finally came out here and said, well, we kind of like this guy, it's pretty cool. And basically said, we're going to take it away from you. Teddy Roosevelt in 1903 made it a national park, and ever since. And I don't know why the national park is so lucky, but they've certainly bought some cool big caves that didn't even know how big they were. And I like to refer, Wind Cave, in my opinion, as I think it is the largest, most complex, three-dimensional maze cave in the world, and I'm sure that's subject to debate. But if you've ever been in there, I know I refer to it, there's levels of the cave, but it's more like different elevation levels as opposed to levels of a building. And you can literally go for miles and miles and miles and miles in 3 dimensions with a million choices, and there's no connection for where you started. So many times the way in is the way out. So it's truly what I want to say, the most perfect cave, because it never ends. You always want to find the end, but you really don't want to find the end. It keeps on going. And then this character, okay? This is Dave Springhetti, okay? Dave I met because of Wind Cave. Dave was a local caver with the Paz Grotto, and we started back in the 70s. And he got involved with the exploration out there, and we have become lifelong friends. Lifelong, because we have done so much together over the years, so much exploration and other things. In fact, if you see the two of us together, we've known each other longer than our wives put together. Unfortunately, we act like two old wives who've been together that much time. But truly, one of the great things in the caving community is the relationships that you develop. This is a picture of the lowest level of Wind Cave, which is down what we call the lakes area. This is what we refer to as Windy City Lake. For those who know the individual, over here on the left side is Chris Hill. The rock that he's standing on, he's actually about standing in 6 inches of water. And we have made many trips across that lake, usually by swimming. It's cold as shit. And sometimes by raft. But I guess all these years later, Hazel has told me that I am forbidden from swimming across the lake anymore because she has determined it's the most purest water on planet Earth or something to that effect. So I've been banned, and I think all cavers from swimming through the water anymore. And of course, we talked about putting in base camp and phone wires and eating all sorts of who knows what underground, doing radio locations, helictite bushes, some really cool helictite bushes we call the burnt pine tree forest. And this is another person, those lifetime things. Some of you remember, this is Andy Flurkey. I met him when I was going to college, University of Illinois in Chicago, at the Windy City Grotto. He was a geologist. During the 80s, he was NSS bulletin editor. A really fine person I've caved with so many years of my life. And unfortunately, Andy is now in declining health. I just visited him down in Houston, Texas. Unfortunately, he's now in hospice care, so it's terrible because the person who I've caved with all my life is healthy as heck and haven't seen him in that condition. But he was responsible for so many things. Wind Cave is not particularly known for its flowstone formations, but it does have a few. This is back in the days, when this is all flash photography, and flash bulbs and open shutters and whatever. And this is just a nice little formation here. But the neat thing about it is after we took a picture with a use an open shutter, open the shutter, shut off the flash bulb, close the shutter. But I noticed something that I think that thing is still lit up after the flash bulb went off. So we did just the opposite. This time we flashed off the flash bulb, closed the shutter, or the shutter was closed, then opened the shutter in the dark, and picked up that. Yeah, kind of cool. What is that, phosphorescence, I guess? I think it's phosphorescence. Or it's either that or it's radioactive. Which may be, I don't know. Wind Cave has got so many different and unique, and I want to say unique formations. And I love the cave scientist, particularly Art Palmer. He's such a great guy. He's been studying Wind and Jewel Cave for a long time. And he'll be having a talk like this explaining the geomorphology and the cave history. What he thinks or prophesies about how something happened. And I remember listening to him one time and saying, Art, I needed to go see something. So I took him on a trip in the cave and pointed out and says, oh, damn, I got to change my hypothesis. But he's so great about it. I love it. I love it. Lots of box work, crate work, survey trips. Anyway, Wind Cave, a great place, and it's a big part of my life, and I know it's a big part of other people's life too. All right, now we're going to switch caves switch topics over here. This is also Andy Flirty's fault and Dave Springhetti's fault, these two people I just talked about. We were having back in I think 1977, all these trips in the Wind Cave. We were pretty much tired of going to the Wind Cave, so Andy suggested we go over to the Bighorn Mountains for, I think it was a Labor Day weekend, just to get away from the Black Hills, go do something different. He says, oh, by the way, he says, oh, we found this little cave over there, over in the Bighorns, and while we're over there, can we just stop by and map it? It was only supposed to be, a few hundred feet long, 1,000 feet long, something like that. He says, sure, we'll go over there and map it. And so two survey teams, Dave and I and our wives were on one. Andy was at the entrance. The whole idea, Andy was going to survey from the entrance in, and we were supposed to go to the back of the cave, survey out. In an hour or two or whatever, we'd be finished. Well, if any of you have ever been to Great X, down the Crisco Crack into the stream passage, it's kind of a bitch. And the first 1,000 feet of the cave, a lot of crawlways and water and rocks, and it's miserable. It's 9,000 foot elevation. I don't know, the water is liquid ice, and it's just not real comfortable. And Dave was out in the lead, and I'm trying to wait for Dave, trying to say, which way do we go around this next obstacle? And I'm cold, and I look up, and I see it kind of opens up there, kind of dry up there. So I climbed up there, and it was nice dry passage going off to the side. No footprints, no nothing. And I said, Andy never mentioned anything about this, but it's just a loft level. Those things don't normally go very far. So I called Dave, come on up here and check it out. So, and then about whatever it was, this machine seems to be delayed action or something. Inefficient operator. Are they coming? Okay, all right. That's Trapper Canyon, blah, blah, blah. Entrance, the Great X Cave, it's a sump. All the mountain runoff runs into the entrance and drops underground. This is going down the entrance Crisco Crack. That's Dave, by the way, back in whatever, 1977, I think. But here's that climb going up that little climb I was talking about. And then a few seconds later, coming out into the Great Hall. And the Great Hall, should be a caver in that picture someplace. Yeah, standing down there in the bottom. All of a sudden we have this 100-foot high passage and just blackness off in the distance. And this is in dolomite. Dolomite's not known for having big caves. We thought we'd come up into the Madison Formation. We find out we didn't. And the Great Hall is about 2,000 feet long. And what was neat about the Great Hall is you could stand in that passage 100 foot high, and in some places more than 100 feet wide. Cold air breeze going by, a wind movement, and the passage is that big, and it was going in. And this thing is way up in the mountains. And we followed the breeze, and the breeze eventually led us to this little drop. Not a little drop, it's probably a multiple pitch thing, about 100 feet down into this, which looks like an innocent stream passage. The only time you want to go in Great Eggs Cave is during very dry periods, because even a warm day with high snow melt turns into this particular passage the water could get, and I'm not 100% sure, 40, 50, 60 feet deep very quickly. But we called it the Great Worland River, and it has led to this map here, with the entrance up here in this green area, the exit way the hell over there, and I can't remember the exact distance, but it's like, Pete, are you here? Is it like 7 miles from?
It's around six something.
Yeah, 6 something miles away. And Trapper Canyon is this blue line you see up here, and it's like 1,000 foot deep vertical face canyon, and that's where the exit is. And some of these pictures are actually from Pete, or from pictures that Pete took on. This is Pete Shiflett took on some of these trips. By the way, you know, if you've ever been through this cave once from entrance to entrance, you're glad that you're alive and survived the trip. Nobody ever does it again, except Pete. How many times, Pete? 8? 9? It is truly a very, very special place, very cave. It's a cave with a great national significance. 1980, through multiple trips, multiple surveyors, I think we ended up with, what, 1,408 feet? Something like that. It was the deepest cave in the United States for some time. But the wonderful part is the exit, the grim crawl of death. And this is probably under ideal conditions right here, isn't it, Pete? It only gets worse from this point. Many people, to include me, have almost died in the damn crawlway. And then the NSS, we decided, or the NSS decided to basically acquire the cave, and of course it's an NSS cave preserve available to NSS cavers to be able to go caving there. So it's a great national resource. All right, different topic. How many people were at my place in 1988? All of you guys? It probably wasn't one of the most sane things I've ever done. Again, this is partly Springhetti's fault. We agreed to host a convention, but if you remember back in 1980s and before that, getting people to come to a Western convention, if you got 400 people, you got a big convention. So Dave and I come up with an advertising plan 2 years in advance and started, promoting the Black Hills, promoting the caves and all that. And so maybe we'd get 500 people. Well, when 1,300 or so people showed up at my front door, and there's about 5 or 6 of us on the convention staff, it was like, holy crap. So I don't know what happened that week other than from the pictures, but I hope you all had a good time. Because crazy people like me wanted to not just put on a convention, but wanted to put on a happening. We wanted to have all the normal sessions and banquets and all that kind of stuff, but we wanted to wrap it in an atmosphere of entertainment and fun. And so obviously the Old West was the theme. So we had stage coaches, and we had hot air balloons every morning. We had horses for people to ride. We had the most amazing caterer. If you remember the Howdy Party, that caterer fed all 1,200 people in less than 20 minutes. And you can come back for seconds, thirds, fourths, fifths. Absolutely remarkable. We had dumbasses. We robbed the bank in town. I mean, we literally robbed the bank. It was a real bank, Wells Fargo Bank.
She worked for it, didn't
She worked for the bank, yes. We had real guns, real bank. Try to do that today. All the bank people dressed up in old Western clothes. The stagecoach came to town with the strong box, you know. It was met in front of the bank by the mayor. It was the real mayor, and he was dressed in a white suit with a big cigar, looked like Boss Hogg, you know, from Dukes of Hazzard. Oh, welcome, boys, you know, and bringing the strong box in the bank, you know. And then the Dalton gang showed up, you know. Yeah, Dalton bank comes ripping in the bank, you know, with horses and with blaring guns, and those are all real guns, by the way, you know, firing blanks, but we had to get not only permission to do this, but what you don't understand is that in order to do this, that the real sheriff is there, and the real deputies in costume with also real guns, but they also have real bullets. You know, just as a safeguard, storming in the bank. This is one of the bank tellers that worked there. She became one of the hostages that got kidnapped. There was a big shootout in front of the bank. One of the bank robbers got caught. Then there was a trial on the front steps of the bank, and it was a real judge, magistrate. He convened it. We had a special rope hanging noose fixed up in the tree. We hung one of the bandits. This whole thing at the convention, we had all sorts of stuff going on. This is also the lead singer in one of our bands. She shows up later out at the rodeo. And then there's this. This was an experiment. Yeah, I live on a ranch, okay. I also live in different boxes. I have my caver box and my caver friends. I also live on a ranch, so I have my cowboys and cowboy friends, and there's not any intersecting points. So we're going to see if we can't put on a caver participating rodeo, the SPELEO rodeo. And we did. And it was a hoot in so many ways. And then this convention came along. And I wasn't going to really do too much volunteering, but they convinced me that I needed to put on another SPELEO rodeo. I said, holy smoke. So, tomorrow night at the event center will be the second time in the history of the world that we're going to attempt bringing cowboys and cavers together. And all I can say is this. No animal will be hurt in what we are going to attempt. The cavers, on the other hand, no guarantees. Anyway, tomorrow night. All right, keep going here. Okay, after we had 1,300 people camped on our front lawn for a week or 10 days, after that we decided to start doing regionals at the ranch. So for about 10 years in a row, we put on what's called the Black Hills Caver Classic. Much easier to do, by the way, you know, dealing with 100 people versus 1,300 people. And we had a lot of fun with our Caver Classics for 10 years at the ranch. Usually all sorts of good food. We would sometimes barbecue an entire hog. The first year we cooked chicken, we never did that again. And then every once in a while, you know, the hog would get a lot of, well, we're cowboys, you know. but it all turned out. And we had a great time, bonfires. And we're going to switch again to, where am I going? Oh, okay, this is a little more, I don't want to say boring. But so many things in being a caver. That particular year, I was involved with way too many things because I became NSS president, and we started to pursue a federal cave law. Actually, it was started a couple of years before that. The conservation chair was Jerry Thornton, and they were trying to put something together and make it work. Well, Jared Thornton basically essentially retired from conservation chair. He went to go on to, I think, ACCA. And Janet Thorne became conservation chair. And we kind of picked this thing up to see if we couldn't, what we can do about it. Now, you got to realize we knew nothing about federal laws or how to make them. You know, we just really didn't know anything. But it didn't stop us, you know. And so we had a lot of caver help. You know, Ernst didn't care. Yeah, these are vintage pictures, so you know.
Never seen that picture.
And the gentleman in the middle, Congressman Boucher from Virginia, the castings were really good, and other cavers in Virginia to get his support for the idea of a cave law. And it's really cool. This is what it took. It took cavers from all over the country to get the grassroots kind of approach. And but we found out it takes more than just one congressman, because I thought, well, you know, a congressman can introduce a law and we'll get it passed. Yeah, you're right. So we needed also people on the other side of the aisle, on the Senate side. So there was this young congressman in South Dakota. Now this is back when we had 2 congressional representatives, right? 2. One was in the eastern part of the state, one was in the western part of the state. Well, after the 1980 census, we lost one, so we only had 1. And this young person, this Congressman Daschle, had to be the congressman for the whole state. And so he didn't know anybody out in the western part of the state, and by some circumstances, well, it wasn't some circumstances, I was the city engineer in Hot Springs, okay? Sort of like big deal, right? Well, I had just finished designing and building a brand new wastewater treatment plant. Wastewater, yeah. You know, people don't think about that, but yeah. And I was so proud of this thing because I'd put together an innovative land application system, and this is the most expensive project the city has ever done in its history. And I was looking for, I wanted to have like a ribbon cutting ceremony. So I had the gall of asking this Eastern person from Aberdeen if he'd come out for cutting the ribbon at the sewer plant, and he says, yeah, it'd be fun. So he came out, and it was a piece of toilet paper we used for the ribbon, you know. We had a ribbon cutting ceremony. You know, and I mean, what better than a politician to speak on fertilizer? But what I didn't realize that we would become lifelong friends. And but he was just a junior congressman. Can I get this to move? Come on. Operator error. But he would come out to the ranch. We would ride horses. This is his wife, Linda, up here. And just as a side point, his wife, Linda, later on in life became the deputy administrator for FAA during the TW800 incident. And we just got to be good friends. They bring the kids out, the mom, the grandma, or his dad and mom. We got to be good friends. So we got his support as a congressman for the cave thing. And this was like in, I don't know, November of 85, I guess. And he decided he wanted to run for Senate. And I says, but I would like you to go see a cave. And I invited him to go on a cave trip. But he says, we'll do it, but I'm going to run for the Senate. Win or lose, we'll come on that cave trip. Now, I thought he was just, pacifying me. It sounds like that's pretty cool, sure. Well, he did win the Senate race. And a couple of months later, he says, that cave trip? Yeah, let's go do that. So I said, cool. So I don't know about history buffs, but I don't know how many senators actually gone caving. I don't mean along a public tour out, but in the back parts of the cave. So obviously we took them to a cave, right? So Tom Daschle and me and Wynn, who the hell is that young kid next to him? In Wynn Cave, so we're giving them a first-hand experience of what caving is about and why we do it and all the important stuff, and we're just having a lot of fun. And there again, Dave Springatti, a big part of this. Jim Pizarro's over here. He was working for the Wynn Cave at the time. And I don't even know what this sign says. Well, Representative Dash, one small step for man, one giant leap for caves. Happy hour I don't know.
Bar is now open.
And now open. Yeah, we'd hauled all those soft drinks and things in the cave. Well, so we were having fun with it. But what we did is we gained an incredible ally in the Senate. But he was a junior senator, you know, but nonetheless a strong advocate. Now we thought, okay, but now we need more senators. Now we need more congressmen. This is where cavers came in place all across the country. And I know Janet and I made a quadrillion trips to Washington. And anybody that would listen to us, we can button a hole and we would talk to. And most of them are said, you know, sort of like, get out of here, kid, you don't know what you're doing. It takes years and years and years to get legislation. Nobody ever gets it through in one session of Congress. And I mean, you know, Jenna can tell you the stories we've heard and the excuses we heard, but we were undaunted. We were young and we had ideals, and so we kept going. And I have to thank people like Gary and Barb Moss and Paul and Lee Stevens. I don't know how many times I slept at their homes, but I think damn near enough to be a resident after a while. But it took lots and lots and lots of trips. But then we found out we have to do things. We got to convince other people, other senators and other congressmen. And come on here, slides. Go. Lots of meetings. Lots of time back at the ranch. You don't realize, but sometimes national policy is not set in Washington. I learned it's not only what you know, which is important, but also who you know. But we finally got it. When we finally got something to be introduced. And this was the introduction bill in the Senate, 927. And I was on the, I think I was EVP at the time. Janet, you picked me up. We were going to a board meeting in Parkersburg, West Virginia. You picked me up at Pittsburgh, right? And there was a blizzard, yeah. And we're working away in a blizzard to go to a board meeting in Parkersburg. And anyway, en route, this is before cell phones, I had called home to my wife from Denver when I was changing planes. He says, oh, by the way, Senator Daschle's trying to get a hold of you. I said, really? Well, okay, so I called Senator Daschle. He says, I intend to introduce that bill Monday morning. I says, well, that's cool. I'm on my way to a board meeting. I can let everybody know. He says, yeah, but can you write the speech? What? Well, I need. I said, I don't know. I'll see what I can do. Anyway, went to the board meeting, and now I got to change my travel plans. So I got in the back seat of Paul and Lee's Subaru, I think it was, you know, a little Subaru packed in there, you know, in the back seat, you know, on the way back to Washington, trying to write a speech for a senator, which scared the hell out of me. We got back to DC late at night, got it all typed up, went on down to the Hart Senate office building, got it turned in to the staff, and they wanted to know if we could be back at, I forgot, 8 o'clock in the morning, I think, on the Senate floor. I says, oh, it's late, but we'll be there. You know, so we got up, got down the Senate floor, and we're sitting in the balcony. Senator Daschle steps up in the balcony and reads the damn speech I wrote. Holy crap. And introduces the bill. And I thought, wow, you know, by now we have it made. We're doing good stuff. But then we started to find out that the agencies that are affected, like the Interior and Agriculture and Forest Service, they started to see this bill was moving, and they said, "Oh, wait a minute, we got to object." Okay, and one of the biggest objections that you all heard about is that, and this was the Forest Service, I'm pretty sure, and this came up at whatever hearing, that we don't want to have to manage every stinking hole in the ground. So we all want to manage significant caves. Significant caves? What the hell's a significant cave? We just wanted to make you aware that caves are important, manage them appropriately. But that wasn't good enough. They said no, just, so this whole argument about what's a significant cave, and that's what popped up in the bill, there in that, where my laser pointer went to in the bottom line. One of the things that I wanted in the bill specifically is the word recreation, because cavers all across the country wanted to go to various caves on federal land, but they always had to have a premise. You know, you got to be studying something. You got to be a scientist. You got to be surveying. You got to be inventorying. And I'm saying, it says no. These are national resources. Okay, people don't go to national parks. You know, it's your national park. you should be able to go there and see it, just like caving. I know I'm one of those kind of people that I need to be doing something like surveying or mapping. But the beauty of caving is the experience that you have in that underground wilderness. You're awed by it, you're inspired by it. Everybody who wants to should have that opportunity. So I tried to make get my tool going over here, because I wanted the word, where is it, recreation, blah, blah, blah. 3 lines down, okay, all right, recreation, all right. That was important, and unfortunately, recreational purposes, right. It's hard looking straight up at this thing. Yeah, right here. Yeah, right here. Education it got it hyphenated. Or, why did they do that? I don't know. Or recreational purpose, not reactional purposes, or ask the Congressional Printing Office. I don't know how that works. But it was important that be in there. I wanted that in there for cave's sake. That, fortunately, got left in there, which is good. The significant thing led to more years and years of issues after that. But anyway, we had got it introduced. We had, what do we have, Janet? 6 senators and I forgot how many congressmen behind this thing. And so we started through all this hearing process, and I didn't realize that you had to go to House hearings and Senate hearings and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we're getting on down to the deadline. One session of Congress theoretically is 2 years. And we were down to like the last literally few days, right? And it actually got down to the last few minutes. But through people like Daschle working overtime, was able to get it passed. It got passed into law literally at the last hour, I think, of Congress. And so we got public law, 100-691. And we were just ecstatic. We actually got a federal law that protects caves on federal lands. And we thought, wow, our job is done. This is cool. This is really, this is monumental. Hell no. And we found out you got to do things like the agency has to write regulations. Oh, crap. So, back to the argument table. And then the problem is some of the agencies drug their feet. They didn't want to write the regulations because they, frankly, in my opinion, didn't want to do it. But whatever the reasons were, it wasn't getting done. And it wasn't going to get it done for a long time. And we're looking at each other like, what do we do? Well, your only choice is some sort of a legal action, hiring some multi-million-dollar law firm to move this along. NSS isn't going to be able to do that. So you go back to, so I went back. I tried real hard not to use people like Daschle to do things. I said, Doc, I don't know what we're doing here. And it says, you got the law passed, but the regulations aren't getting made. So he says, okay. And I got a call back a few hours later. Can you be in Washington on whatever it is, Monday morning? I said, okay, I'll be there. So I go all the way to DC and get into his office in the Hart Senate building. And all this Secret Service security around. I said, what the heck is going on here? And I had to go through security, and it's like, I don't understand this. It was all around Daschle's office. What, is the president here or what? No, it was the Secretary of Interior. And since he's in, the line for the presidency, whatever, he has his own Secret Service. He had called the Interior Secretary on the phone and says, I want you in my office Monday morning. I said, okay. And so I go in there, Interior Secretary, I think it was Manuel Lujan, if I remember at the time. Is that right? Yeah. And he had brought with his chief of, chief of BLM, Forest Service, Park Service, anyway, all the top people under him. And we're in Daschle's office, and I'm like, holy smoke. And Daschle starts explaining to Secretary Lujan that, we have a problem here. What's the problem? And Lujan looks at his top people, and he says, what's the problem? And his top people started to make excuses, and you could see Lujan just basically put his finger up, quiet, and says, we'll get those regulations out this week. That's an unreal place. Anyway, the regulations came out, and whether they're good or bad, we can all argue that, but they got published in the Federal Register, and now we're trying to live with that. And the only problem that bothers me is that the law was written simply, and it's amazing how they can take a simple law and make convoluted regulations, and in some cases that really, in my opinion, either go against or don't fully implement the law, but that's another thing. Some of the major game players over here On the far left is Pete Rouse. I've known Pete for 25 years or more, or rather he worked for Daschle for 25 years, all the way from when he was a congressman through majority leader. Daschle was majority leader for 10 years in the Senate. A really good guy. He's the guy behind the scenes who makes everything happen. You never see him. And his opinion of the press, he says, I never met a member of the press I like. But if you want to get the job done, he is also, to show you how bipartisan people like Pete is and how good he is, in the Senate he was considered the 101st senator. The Republican staff loved him as much as the Democratic staff. He's a man who could really get things done. A really good guy. Nancy Erickson is personal secretary for, again, 25 years, lifelong people. She's from the eastern part of the state. These are just, if you meet these people, if I've ever had to meet these people, you know within 2 minutes they're quality people with integrity, really caring people. This guy over here, I don't know him. But to carry this through, when Daschle left the Senate, there was this new senator coming in to Washington. Someone had never been to Washington before, didn't know anything, didn't know how to find the restroom kind of thing. And he was looking that he needed to get staff. Well, and since all these Daschle people were leaving, this new senator went to Daschle and wanted to know, can I get Pete to go to work for me? Well, Pete had been doing this for 25 years. He was sort of, excuse me, I thought I shut that off. Off. He was tired of doing all this stuff, and he was just going to retire. I mean, his whole life was, well, he didn't have a life. He slept on the couch in the Capitol many times, but and because this new senator asked him a couple of times if he'd go to work for him, he said, no, I ain't going to do that. So he went to Daschle and says, well, how can I get your guy to go work for me? He said, what can I do? And he says, well, he probably isn't going to do it, but he says, we got a bunch of people that need some jobs, and Pete can find you good people. So if you ask him, he's always helpful. Maybe he can find you some people to staff your office with. Unfortunately, Pete agreed, and he got sucked in again. This new senator was Barack Obama. He became Barack Obama's chief of staff in the Senate, and then when he ran for president, he was chief of staff at the White House for a while, and he was on the transition team to put in the new whatever. So again, through caving, I would have never thought this would happen in my life. Nancy became the secretary for the U.S. Senate. After that, she took care of, I forgot, 200 or 300 employees who makes all the paperwork for the Senate go. Just neat quality people. So I can tell you that there's a bunch of people in Washington that are not so good, but I can also tell you there were some there that were very good. Okay, I want to also say, come on. It seems like this thing wants to go. All right. Also, a lot of this stuff led to a lot of MOUs. We signed MOUs with Forest Service, BLM, National Park Service, Nature Conservancy, and I'm probably missing some, Janet. A lot of different, and this is the stuff that theoretically most of the NSS is working under today through these agencies. I think this is a Forest Service signature. Look who's up there, Janet. I think I'll say these are vintage photographs. National Park Service. Kind of funny with the National Park Service. Daschle attended, and that's the Roger Kennedy, the Park Service director at the time. And he came over to the Interior building for this signing ceremony. And we got a call, because we were waiting for him to show up. And the director got a call, says, there's this guy at the front door that claims he's a senator. Because he didn't take his ID with. So I had to go down and identify Daschle. Yeah, that's the guy to go on. And if you notice here, he also ended up signing the document. Okay, thank you. Oops, back up. I want to back up. All right, there we go. I'm going to say, so many people involved with this. A lot of credit to Janet and all the work she did. Nice vintage photograph. and Bruce Bannerman, because we put on lots of multimedia slides. There's nothing like beautiful cave pictures to sell people. And Bruce put in so much time behind the scenes, he doesn't get enough credit, because his pictures, not his pictures, but him showing the pictures to senators, congressmen, hearings, whatever, MOUs, made big impressions. And they never got enough credit, and they really do. They're just wonderful people. Okay, I got to rush here into another important topic. Is that I said 88 was a big time for me. Not only did we run a convention, became president of the NSS, putting together a cave law, but the other thing is this guy, Derek Ford. I knew Derek a little bit. He was big in international caving, UIS and that kind of stuff. But he had arranged for a group of Soviet cavers to come here. I says, really? And they were supposed to show up at the 88 convention. They didn't. Didn't surprise me, because I had a lot of things to say about Soviet cavers. Because when we were mapping Wind Cave, and we put some more miles on the cave each year, and we got on the long cave list, the cave got bigger, or on the top 10 list. And then this cave you couldn't pronounce in the Soviet Union, they said it's bigger. I says, prove it. It's like the arms race in the Cold War. Anyway, Derek had arranged for this guy, and I'm a delegate, Alexander Klimchuk, okay? Yeah, I mean, a quality person. But I've never met these people. I mean, these are, I was in the military, I mean, I learned everything about how to fight the Soviets, but I never met one. So I wasn't quite sure what to expect. And I want to refer to them as Soviets because it was the Soviet Union. I didn't know there was a Ukraine. It was just another part of the Soviet Union. They were all Russians. So when you see flags and whatever, it's got to do with the period of time back in the 1980s. But anyway, we came over and we started to develop a friendship, okay? Alexander's just a cool, I mean, they got into the cowboy thing so big. I mean, and you hear this thing about Putin, the big tough Russian, got nothing on Alexander. Yeah, so he's a good guy. Anyway, they had a great trip over here that led, okay, I got to quit here real quick, led to the International Union trip over to Russia. We got to go, these are the main characters that went on our first trip: Mark Lamphere, Bob Montgomery, myself, Rick Bridges, and Ron Curbo. And it was an amazing trip in so many ways. This is in Kiev. That's the cathedral you see on television news nowadays. It's called Peshira Monastery, which is basically the cave monastery, because underneath it are catacombs. An opportunity to see that. We were taken to the Ukrainian capital, met with High Mucky Mucks. This is Yevgeny Kokolowski, Supreme Soviet of Ukraine. Like, holy crap, We got introduced to their interior departments. This book here is called Krasnaya Kenya, which is Red Book. It's an encyclopedia of all the endangered plants and species in the Soviet Union in the 1980s. It's a really neat book. Got to see lots of caver parties. Onto the western Ukraine, where we got to actually go caving and got to see a lot of western Ukrainian caves. And yes, we did get to optimistic Siskaya. And what a cave. We can talk more about those stories later because my time is up. We went down to Crimea. And I'm not sure that ship out there isn't that Moskva thing. It's probably the last picture of it. Beautiful country down there. We saw a lot of caves in down the Crimean Peninsula. A wonderful trip. We got to go to Yalta and parties like you can't imagine. And yes, too damn much vodka. And as most of you know, I don't drink. But I was consuming, I can't really swear by this, I think I was consuming somewhere between 1 and 2 bottles of vodka per day. I don't recommend it. Now, John, Milroy, piece of cake for him, but. Moscow, I never thought I'd stand in Red Square in the Soviet Union unless I was there under military operation. So an amazing trip in so many ways. That led to more trips back here. It led to more trips to Washington. One of the people we brought back with us was Evgeny Sinenko, who was the Interior Minister during the Chernobyl incident. Arranged for him to speak to Congress on the Chernobyl incident, and it was remarkably open conversation about that disaster. The governor of South Dakota made Alexander official citizens of the state, and that's Yadloblu Yugasha Dakota. I love South Dakota. And we have become the bestest friends, and we still stay in contact today. And I don't have to tell you how terrible things are over in the Ukraine, but I now know that it is the Ukraine. It is not Russia. It's not the Soviet Union. It is the Ukraine. An incredibly proud people, wonderful people, and proud to say my best friend. And I told Alexander that shouldn't be the case. My enemy should not be a better person than me, and he is. He's a diplomat, he's a gentleman, he's a cave scientist, he's a humanitarian, and I can't say enough about him. So I'm gonna have to ride off into the sunset. I'm sorry I'm kind of going into too much time, but I just wanted to touch base. The NSS has been such a blessing in so many eclectic ways. And thank you for your time. If there's any time for questions, I'll leave it up to whoever the moderator, or for Gary. 3 minutes. 3 minutes. And Milroy can't ask any questions. He can make comments. Questions on any subject?
I'll make a comment. You talked about having to get into with the security people and all that.
No.
When you had us bring the slideshow to the senators and the staff,
Right.
try bringing in 2 huge boxes of screens that are expandable and all this stuff. We went through security.
Yeah.
I mean, that was wild, because we had
Yeah.
like 4 or 5 projectors and just all this stuff, and they didn't believe us at all that we were supposed to give a show.
Well, especially when you tell them you're from a radical underground organization.
That's probably it, John.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.